Hi, my name is Valerie DeVos, and I'm the Assistant Director of Disability Support Services. In Module 2, we'll focus on some general information about the DSS process. Topics in this section will include how DSS determines eligibility for services and accommodations, examples of specific accommodations provided to students with disabilities, and a how-to for faculty and staff when it comes to responding to student accommodation requests. Let's start with discussing how DSS determines eligibility for services and accommodations. In order to receive disability-related accommodations, students are required to self-identify to the university. Students wishing to request accommodations must complete an application as well as submit thorough documentation of their disability. Once DSS staff has reviewed a student's application and documentation, we will schedule an intake interview. During the intake, the student will meet one-on-one with a DSS counselor to come up with an individualized plan for accommodations based on the student's limitation and the supporting disability documentation. The final step in registering includes completing an accommodation conference, where the student will meet with the counselor to discuss the process for requesting accommodations from faculty. With the exception of School of Medicine students, these students complete the accommodation conference with the School of Medicine Student Services rather than through DSS. Accommodations are approved through DSS because there's a substantiated and documented medical reason for accommodation. They are not just granted to help a student do better in class, instead they are provided to level the playing field for the student with a disability, and without them, they would not be able to fully participate in the class or activity. Accommodations must be reasonable. It's possible that they may be reasonable in one setting, but unreasonable in another. If at any point you feel that an accommodation may be unreasonable, please contact DSS to discuss. It must be well documented as to why an accommodation is viewed as unreasonable in a specific situation. Referring to your program's technical standards or essential functions is a good starting point. Simply saying no to a request that is not reasonable should not be viewed as the end of discussion of the accommodation options. If your program does not have clearly identified technical standards, please feel free to consult with DSS about developing some. We have identified some schools and programs, both undergraduate and graduate, as best practice examples, and we're happy to share those with others. DSS handles requests for accommodations individually. This slide includes just a few examples of some of the more common services and accommodations provided to students with disabilities. A detailed description of the most common accommodations can be found in the faculty handbook. Testing accommodations are our most common requested type of accommodation and one that may take some coordinating between the instructor, student, and DSS. Instructors and students should work together to determine how testing accommodations should work for a specific class. It is the instructor's responsibility to work with the student individually to provide reasonable accommodations. If you are unable to provide a testing accommodation, DSS is available to proctor exams as a courtesy to faculty. We work hard to maintain a secure testing environment. All tests are timed and testing stations are monitored by a staff member via a video camera. Tests are also housed in a locked file cabinet and only handled by DSS staff. DSS utilizes an electronic system that students use to send accommodation notices to instructors. Students are responsible for initiating the accommodation request through the portal. Once a student sends the accommodation notice to their professor, they are instructed to follow up to set up a time to meet and discuss in a confidential location. Once you have received an email notifying you of the request, it is your responsibility to view the accommodation notice, confirm receipt, and meet with the student to discuss accommodation arrangements. Some additional important notes are: School of Medicine students do not use the student portal to send notices. These students present paper accommodation letters to their course director and are expected to meet with them to review accommodations. Students can request accommodations at any point in the semester. Notice of accommodation requests must be provided to an instructor in a reasonable amount of time. And last, if a student requests an accommodation, they are expected to go through DSS. We collaborate with staff as much as we do with faculty to provide accommodations. Not all staff members will receive an accommodation notice. So when working with students, you'll want to listen for cues from those who may need support. You'll also want to consider accessibility when developing programs and activities for your area. If you are working with a student in need of accommodation, they'll most likely notify you verbally of their request. Some accommodations may be very easy to coordinate, like providing a handout in an alternative format or meeting in an accessible location. In situations where you may need assistance with coordinating, please contact DSS. There also may be times that our office receives a request and reaches out to an individual area for assistance with coordinating. If a staff member has questions regarding how to provide an accommodation, please contact us. This concludes Module 2. If you have any questions related to this module or any of the information included in this training, please contact us. Thank you.